Today I'm going to talk about how sometimes it's really interesting to think how you blend various questioning techniques together. We can define individual techniques. So for example, cold calling is a classic questioning technique, and we can define that as no hands up, no calling out, and the teacher selects who to answer, being judicious about who to call and making sure people feel included and ready to answer to make them all think. And that's a strategy to work on itself. Then there's think, pair, share. You want students to all have the chance to air their thoughts. Now when you're cold calling, sometimes what can happen is, even if you've involved several students to verbalise their answer and try to get everyone thinking, it's still the case that not everyone has yet had a chance to hear themselves think, to really rehearse their own explanations, say. So then you revert to a pair share, where the focus then is on everybody talking and sharing, and you've got the maximum number of people thinking aloud and hearing themselves think and rehearsing their explanation. And then you need to bring it back in to check what people have been saying and to see if people understand each other, to check that students can articulate their reasoning. So you check for understanding. Checking for understanding is something you do while you're cold calling in response to think, pair, share. And so blending all of these strategies together into a rhythm is really what you're focusing on. Sometimes it's important to start just with one, so getting cold calling right, making sure students aren't hands up as a default, getting the routine of pair share going well, so the students understand that when they're sitting there next to their partner, their talk partner, that there's an accountability that yes, we do need to do this thinking and this talking because we might be the ones that are asked to share what we're thinking with the class in a low stakes way, but it's definitely something that might happen. So let's do this properly and really engage. So there's got to be some structure to that. And then checking for understanding, where it's the habit of you as a teacher saying, so what were you thinking? What did you understand? Rather than that default of saying, has everybody understood? Is everybody okay? And we flip that around. And then there's the going deeper. There's probing. So probing questions is a whole routine in itself and also a habit. So that when students are giving you their answers, you've got this dialogue in your own head thinking, right, how can I extend this? What else could I ask them? What else could you say? Is there another way to express it? Is there a different explanation? And getting them to think, pull the knowledge around a bit. And that's really quite an enjoyable thing as a teacher, to kind of spar with a student a little bit and get them to see if they can really check their understanding more thoroughly. So probing questioning is a technique. And that's sometimes what you're doing while you're cold calling. So that when you call someone to answer, you hear their first response, but then you listen and say, oh, okay, that's interesting. And what about this? And you follow through. So the follow through is a probing questioning. Or it could be a process question. Now, a process question is quite a specific type of question. It's that sort of question which is, how did you work it out? What was your reasoning? So you're giving me the answer, which might be, say, the answer to a maths problem. That's the answer, yes, but what was your reasoning? Or it could be where you've been asked students to sort of select which of two factors or ideas is the strongest, and they give you their answer, and you say, okay, that's probably a good answer, but what was your reasoning for making that choice? And they have to give you that. And that helps them focus on those sorts of processes, which can then perhaps translate to other questions. In this section, there's a strategy called Say It Again Better. Now, that is one of my absolute favourite strategies to really work on, because Say It Again Better is a way of allowing students to have a first go at an answer, slightly half-formed, slightly tentative, and then you give them a bit of feedback, a bit of coaching, and then they reform their answer to be a more sophisticated response. And that's also a bit of a routine. So the students almost anticipate it, that if I just say, the graph kind of goes up, you think, well, okay, that is true, and it is a first line of kind of reasoning. The graph, there's a trend upwards. But it's more subtle, and there's nuance in it, and it gradually changes. And let's see if we can use the terminology like gradient and intercept and get the students to reform their answer using the terminology we're after, referencing some data perhaps, and then they give you a better answer. They feel better for having done that, and you've got more confidence that they can apply that kind of reasoning. So a good discussion to have in a team or just within your own sort of reflection is, do I understand what each of these techniques can do on its own? And then am I using them in that responsive way as the students respond and as I'm checking for understanding to move around? And if you can seamlessly move from hearing some responses from individuals, and then into a pair discussion to get everyone thinking and talking, and then back to the whole class, kind of fairly effortlessly, but with some good behaviour management routines, then you're going to do it more often. So there you go. That's the kind of the focus of this video, is to think about how you blend questioning techniques and think of yourself as having a repertoire of techniques that you have to draw on whenever you need them.